win-win situations.
How is it win-win? I assume this costs me more because you sued them.
It might cost the ladder company a little bit more to change design. A ladder is a very dangerous product. It's used by so many consumers, and people don't realize that if they don't stand up straight on a ladder and they lean out to clean their gutters or to grab a limb on a tree, that a ladder has a tendency to tip over.
And the labels? Do they make, I mean, you guys do put labels on everything. Does that make us safer?
The interesting thing is that
well, come on, yes or no? Does it
the
make
answer
us safer?
is not always. Labels.
There are 41 labels on this. I would argue we don't read them now
and if
because
you look
they're
at that
so
ladder,
scared of you.
if you look at that ladder, you're standing there. You try to read the print on the label on the side of the ladder. You can't do it.
No, but this is all because of you.
No.
They're scared of you.
Actually, John, I have helped redesign, through my lawsuits, ladders with the Werner Company. The Werner Company now has instructions, which actually one of my engineers in one of my cases worked with them in developing during the 1970s and the 1980s.
Steve Hantler, what's your answer to this?
My answer is, Elbert, I think you're wrong, and I think in the case of many people, you're dead wrong. We have too many lawsuits in this country. Too many lawsuits are being filed against companies, small and large, and they're afraid of all these lawsuits. So what's their response? They're not bringing new products to market. They're not bringing life-saving medical devices to market. Sunstar made a device that would set off an alarm if someone used a Whirlpool. So if a child went in to the Whirlpool, the parents would be alerted. They didn't bring that to market. Fear of lawsuits. There's life-saving medical devices. There's medicines. There are so many products that
Albert,
are not...
what's your answer to that? You deprive us of good stuff.
I do not. Steve's organization is the Goliath that would keep David from the temple of justice. Lawsuits, John, are a thing of last resort.
Let me just do one thing. I want to count to two. 1001, 1002. Another lawsuit was just filed. We have a new lawsuit filed in America every 2 seconds. We were drowning in lawsuits. I'd rather have engineers, automotive engineers and government engineers.
And by automotive, I should point out, I used to work for Chrysler.
I used to work for Chrysler.
Defend suits against Chrysler.
Absolutely. And these engineers put thousands of hours in designing a car to be safe in as many circumstances as they can. Automakers could make a perfectly safe automobile. It's called an Abrams tank. It would cost about $70 million. It's not very good on fuel economy, and there's no rebates on it. The plaintiffs' lawyers are scaring all of us to death. We can't take any risks.
Toyota ran this ad on the perfectly safe kid. Do we have that picture here that ideally all kids would go out fully padded and wearing a football helmet? I mean, this seems to be the world, in theory, that you lawyers would have.
John, that's not a theory that we lawyers have. The lawyers that I know and the lawyers that I work with sue for safety and sue to accomplish something on behalf of their client that they deserve.
Not for the money?
You know, John, if I can interject, if that were true, let's talk about seatbelts. In over half the states in this country, when a plaintiff is suing an automobile manufacturer, the defendant cannot introduce evidence in court that the plaintiff was not wearing a seatbelt. If plaintiffs' lawyers want the public to be safer, they would allow juries to hear plaintiffs aren't wearing seatbelts. They would allow juries to hear plaintiffs are driving drunk.
Albert?
Steve knows, John, that I am one of the proponents that a jury should hear all of the facts and that light should be shed on both the behavior of the plaintiff and on the behavior of the defendant. I say full disclosure and light will bring out the truth and justice.
Last word.
On this, we agree. I hope there's other things we can agree. Maybe there's one other thing that we can agree. Our lawsuit system is broken. By any measure, it's the most expensive in the world. There's too many lawsuits. Products are kept off the market. Companies are not innovating. And it's a silent job killer.
Steve knows that
we're out of time. We'll come back to you. The audience wants to ask you some questions, but thank you, Steve Hantler and Albert Stark. Coming up, as stupid as this is, the winner of the contest for the stupidest warning labels. Okay, lawsuits cost us a lot of money, but the biggest cost is not the money. It's all the good stuff we don't get to have because innovators are scared of being sued. Monsanto gave up on a fire-resistant asbestos substitute because they worried it might attract lawsuits. Likewise, Genentech gave up searching for an AIDS vaccine. This is the invisible harm, and it really hurts people. The Institute for Legal Reform, part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, surveyed small businesses and found that almost half, 45%, said they made a product unavailable to avoid lawsuits. And then there's the increased cost and lost jobs. 61% said they changed their business in ways that made their products more expensive. 11% said excessive litigation led them to lay off employees. The lawyers say, what do you mean? We're not that costly. Those record-breaking verdicts you hear about are rare. Most of our suits never even get to trial. And that's true. But that doesn't matter. Our legal system is so expensive that when you're sued, you lose even if the case is dropped. That's what happened to this business in California.
Basketball Town was a special events facility for basketball, volleyball, various sporting events where kids and families could come and spend time after school and on the weekends in a positive athletic environment.
But then a boy booked a birthday party. They scheduled it upstairs. One guest showed up in a wheelchair.
We actually offered to move the party downstairs, and they declined. And as a result, months later, we were served with a lawsuit.
Basketball Town was eventually dropped from the lawsuit, but they still had to pay lawyers $100,000.
Finally, as a result of all the legal fees associated with the lawsuit, we had no choice but to close the facility.
You were dropped from the case. Crystal Chodas joins us now, I should say. You used to work there. You're out of work now.
Right. We went out of business due to the legal fees, about $100,000 in legal fees,
And
fighting
that was
it.
all the money you
That
had?
money should have been going to programs for kids in the community, and it did not.
How many people lost jobs?
About a dozen employees.
And not just your place, the pizza parlor that serviced the area?
The pizza parlor, there was a family-owned business inside. They owned the pizza parlor. Their kids came in and worked on weekends with them, a great family, and it's cost them everything. They have literally lost everything over this lawsuit.
And kids lost a place to play. Your son is in the audience. Zachary, what'd you lose?
Well, I know me and a lot of other kids just lost a place to go and play basketball. Like, it was really the only one in the neighborhood with a lot of courts to...
So where do the kids go now?
There's pretty much nowhere to go unless you want to drive up to Rockland, which is about 45 minutes away.
And you're out of work?
Yes.
Have you found another job?
I went back to school to get my teaching credential, and now I'm hoping to find a teaching job.
Okay, if you're out there, you want to hire her. I'm told she's a good worker. Jim Copeland joins us from the Manhattan Institute and Trial Lawyers, Inc. Read that and you'll see how rich these trial lawyers have become. That's a publication from the Manhattan Institute. They say they're just helping make us safe.
Well, lawyers in some lawsuits may make us safe, but overall they make us less safe. There are lots of things that we don't get. We don't get to have because of these lawsuits. So when mothers are going into the hospital because of their morning sickness, because the drug Bendectin has been taken off the market due to lawsuits, that's making women...
Bendectin's available in other countries.
It's available in every other country, but it's not available here because we're the ones with this wacky litigation system.
Now, you defend business. You could say that we're cherry-picking the most extreme examples. Most businesses don't close. What's your answer to that?
Well, most businesses don't close, but the rest of us are shareholders of these businesses. The rest of us are consumers of products that cost more or aren't introduced into the market. And it's important to realize, Mr. Stark was talking about this being David versus Goliath. Who's the real David? Who's the real Goliath here? Is Crystal the Goliath, or is the real Goliath Jeffrey Fieger with hundreds of millions of dollars? If you look at the trial lawyers together, who we call Trial Lawyers, Inc., the plaintiffs' bar, they bring in over $40 billion a year. That's more than McDonald's. That's more than Coca-Cola.
They give huge amounts to politicians.
They give more than any other business or industry. Over the last 2 decades, they've given $1 billion. Harry Reid, the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, 4 of his top 7 contributors are out-of-state plaintiffs' law firms.
That Basketball Town video came from the Institute for Legal Reform's website, facesoflawsuitabuse.org. It's the Chamber of Commerce. And they have more war stories. In Maryland, 2 geese nested on the lawn of a pool equipment business.
They became protected by the Migratory Species Bird Act. We found this out when we called the Humane Society to find out how we could get rid of them because they were pooping all in front of our store. And we tried to follow the law. We let them do what they were supposed to do, which is sit here, hatch their eggs, and move on.
But then one of the geese flapped its wings and frightened a woman who then fell and broke her hip.
She was suing us for $750,000. Not only were we sued, our landlord was also named in the suit. Even the store next door was named in the suit. Our lawyer sent back a letter to her lawyer explaining that we really didn't have anything to do with the goose other than it was in front of our store.
And the goose was not our employee or our agent.
In court, they won, but under our legal system, even when you win, you lose. They still had the sleepless nights because they were being sued for a ton, still had to pay their lawyer thousands of dollars for his legal fees. Give you the last word about this.
It's just important that we fix the system, John. Nobody's saying to get rid of lawsuits. It's like you set out in the introduction. But we need to get rid of the bad lawsuits. And it doesn't need to be a game that's rigged for the lawyers. The lawyers are the prime beneficiary of our system, and we can change these rules and mean that people like Crystal are going to still stay in business, and that people like Jeffrey Fieger aren't going to make quite as much money.
That'd be good. Crystal, Jim, thank you very much. Next, a contest to pick the stupidest lawyer-driven warning labels, like the one on my go-kart, which warns, caution, this product moves when used. Give me a break. Welcome back. I showed you the label on this go-kart earlier. It says, caution, this product moves when used. So how stupid is that? Why would a company put that label on its product? Because they think it might protect them. Who knows if it will? Labels don't increase prices that much. But what galls me is that, contrary to what the lawyers say, the warnings rarely make us safer, because now there are so many warnings and so many things, few people read any of them. Studies show when there are lots of warnings, people are less likely to read the ones that matter, like the one, say, on microwave popcorn that tells you, don't open the bag like this, you might get burned. But who reads labels anymore? Well, 13 years ago, Bob Dorigo Jones started a contest where consumers picked the stupidest warning labels out there. He's written a book called Remove Child Before Folding, the stupidest, silliest, wackiest warning labels ever. So, Bob, remove child before folding?
We found that on a baby stroller. Like, we need to be warned to take Johnny out of the stroller before we fold it up and throw it in the car.
Some other ones you've given in the past. This is a rectal thermometer that says,
warning, do not use orally after using rectally.
A fishing lure.
Big 4-inch fishing lure with prongs hanging off the end. It's very dangerous.
Nasty looking one.
It says, warning, harmful if swallowed.